Hello and welcome to the Shiny Bees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. I'm your host Jo Millmine and this is episode 115, Phone Down, Knitting Up.
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright.
Hello, welcome one and all to another episode of the Shiny Bees podcast. I am Jo Millmine, I'm your host today, and if you are new with us, hello. Great to have you here for the first time, and if you're back, you know how much I love and appreciate you. Thank you for joining me again on the show, talking all things knitting, bit of comedy, bit of yarn, could be some other random stuff, and it's great to be back again chatting with you. Today, I'm going to be talking about a subject that's been kind of prickling my, I want to say consciousness, probably a little bit, in terms of just something I've been thinking about and becoming steadily a little bit more aware of. And I just want to kind of share those thoughts with you because I think it's something we're probably all a little bit, and again, I don't want to say guilty, something we all do and maybe don't even notice that we're doing it because it's becoming a little bit prevalent that that's just what's done. So that is all about putting your phone down and picking your knitting up instead. And that is in no way a preachy, put your phone down kind of way. It's in a, I've noticed I'm doing this and it's getting in the way of my knitting, quite frankly. And it's just this is what I've thought about it. These are the things that I've kind of come up with as thoughts around that, just to share with you, to make you think and get your feedback, see if it's something that you're doing or you've been thinking about or you have any ideas around. As always, this is a conversation because it's my podcast and I like to hear all about what you think. So thank you, segue, to everyone that's been in touch since Yarn Snob rather, episode 114. I've had some different ideas for different kinds of yarn snobs and different people saying I'm not a yarn snob but I'm a needle snob or whatever else. So I'm going to pull all of those different ideas together as well and share those along with you in another episode. But thank you if that is you and you've been in touch. I've really enjoyed having conversations around this idea of yarn snobbery and what it means to different people. Before I get into the main Phone Down Knitting Up chat part of the podcast, I have a little bit of news of things that's going on. Given that it's the beginning of the month, I like to share that's my kind of signal to share monthly news with you, and I have a couple of different things to share first, and then we will get into that main kind of chat really. So I'm assuming you've got your Rooibos already, so I'm not going to give you a musical sting to indicate go and get in your brie, and I'm just going to crack straight into the news. So first up, unless you've been under a very large rock, you will have noticed that our very dear friend of the show, the Countess, has gone off and in the space of about 2 weeks launched a massive movement called the Tits Out Collective. And this is, if you've met her already in episode 107, and she was in another episode before that, 90 odd, it might have been 94. I'll put links to both of those in the show notes, but it was definitely 107 when she was on most recently talking about If I Want Exposure. And basically someone ripped off her yarn. And this is not unusual for her. Her yarn gets ripped off all the time. But this was a charity colourway and she lost her tits over it, basically. She wasn't happy. She was disappointed that, if you're going to rip something off, just rip off something that's commercial. Don't rip off something that is done with really kind of noble intentions, really. So she launched the Tits Out Collective, which has currently 287 participants. You can find out all about the background of that because I won't go into it in detail again. You can find out all about the background of that on her website. I will link to the blog posts that explain what went on if you don't know. And also you can go and check out all of the different makers that are taking part in her Tits Out Collective challenge, which was basically she gave them the dies. She laid down the gauntlet to every dyer who wanted to take part and said, these are the colours I used. Take the name, do your own version, donate a certain amount to charity from each skein sold, and we will all get together and we will all market this together in a big kind of collective. We don't like copying, and let's make something, instead of shaming someone and calling them out for it, let's just ignore the fact they've done that and do something really positive instead. And it's been, on the whole, very well received. There have been a couple of people who object to the use of the word tits. But then you get that everywhere, let's be honest. And it's not, it goes a lot deeper than just the copying. There's a whole lot of other issues that we talked about in that episode, that she's talked about since, that everyone else is thinking about, that are wrapped up underneath all of this. But her intention for this was like, here, just take it. I'll tell you what dyes I've used. Make your own version, copy it. But let's turn it into a positive, spin on it, put your own personal spin on it, and let's market it all together. So you can find everyone using that and talking about that with the hashtag Tits Out Collective. And she has a Titty Fade gallery. Even I'm like, the amount of boobs in this is crazy. That shows everyone's different contributions without any branding. So it's literally a level playing field. It was really cleverly done. I'm obviously super proud of her, but you should go check that out. I will put a link in the show notes. Likewise, if you enjoyed her on this show and you want to hear more from her, she has launched her own YouTube channel. Yes, she has. And you can see her lovely, whatever hair she's wearing that day, and everything else that she's doing, that she's got going on, and more of her thoughts and things on her YouTube channel, which I will put links to as well. So next up, news-wise, we have tickets for the Great London Yarn Crawl on sale right now. They are available if you've never been before. It is organised, accompanied yarn crawls around London with your own kind of special guides, and the idea is everyone goes on a different trip around the different yarn stores in London. It's hosted by the girls at Yarn in the City, Alison and Rachel, and the profits from it go to Refuge. So that's September the 1st, and if you want to get involved, I think the 70% sold out already, so please do head on over to Yarn in the City right away. Again, links will be in the show notes if you want to go to that, because I would hate for you to miss out. Going to the other capital in the UK, my other favourite capital, or my more favourite capital, London. I'm not a Londoner, you know that, because they can smell the northern on me. They don't like it. But in Edinburgh, they like me because I am half Scottish. So you have the Edinburgh Craft Crawl, which will be taking place on Friday and Saturday, the 27th and 28th of July between 10 and 5. And there's an after party as well at ACFA, which is where the knit nights are for Edinburgh Yarn Festival. That's been organised by Jess, our lovely friend Jess of Ginger Twist Studio, and there are 11 different places on the craft crawl now. So it's not just yarn, it's all sorts of craft shops. So if you fancy a little day out to Edinburgh, especially whilst the weather is as glorious as it is in the UK at the moment, then I would highly recommend that. I've been to both events. They're both great events, both well worth attending. So there you go. And last but not by no means least, a quick shout out for festivals this month, and I have Fibre East on the calendar. I will not be attending because I will not be in the UK, but it was my first yarn show in the UK when I came back from South Africa, and it was pretty good. It's 28th and 29th in Bedford, in 28th and 29th of July, losing my trail of thought there completely. And it's in a school, so it's a bit of a strange venue, but generally quite a nice mix of different vendors. I will say that last time I went, which was the first time I came back, so it is like quite a few years ago, sort of 5 years ago, it was incredibly hot, and the whole UK is hot at the moment, so just bear in mind that it can get really hot there for some reason, and I don't expect it to be any different this time, because the weather, it's 28 degrees in the north, so it's pretty much like Benidorm weather, but without all the plastic chairs. So that is on as well, and you can find more details about that fibreeast.com. Next up, I have review winners. So I asked you guys, would you be so helpful and kind as to write me some iTunes reviews back in May, and I have a couple of prizes that were not claimed yet. You naughty people, you. So Silver Spring Knit, Medic Biz 5 and Bry Knits, you need to email me info@shinybees.com, please, so I can get these out to you. I have put the post up in the Facebook group, Shiny Bees podcast community, and everyone is welcome to join that, not just the winners. Everyone's welcome in there. And you might not have seen it because Facebook being what it is, you just might not have seen it. So here's your nudge to come and give me a shout and claim your prize. And finally, some kind of podcasty sort of news. Been quite a big news segment this time, but I have kept the news quite light on the other episodes recently. So this one, again, I have been a bit pensive recently, in pensive mood. I think it's the sunshine. It makes me super happy and chilled. And I was thinking about like some things, some conversations that have gone on recently, just looking at things people are talking about on social and generally like musing over life in the universe, basically, and about women and voices and being heard and being listened to and misogyny and all that kind of stuff. And you know what I'm like, it's not something I like to kind of dwell too long on, but every now and again someone pokes a stick in my cage and I get a little bit raggy about it, let's say, and I feel like I need to kind of do something about it, particularly as the mother of a very opinionated and outspoken young lady. And I've just been thinking around this whole subject, and I put a video up on Instagram TV, IGTV, the other week about how I record a podcast, basically what I use to get my podcast out to you. And I've had quite a few messages back going, oh, you know, I'm really intimidated by the idea of podcasting. I'm intimidated by the tech. It looks so complex. Like I don't really know what I'm doing. It's not the same as just, you know, like throwing with a smartphone, you can just throw the camera on and get a pretty decent video, and people are generally accepting of that. Whereas when you have an audio podcast, people expect a certain level of quality with the audio because it's a very intimate method of communication. And you can hear every little thing. You can hear every groan from the dog, and you can hear if it's tinny and, you know, recorded quickly and it's not been mixed up or anything like that to improve the sound. You can hear that now, and people are a lot more sensitive to that as technology's improved and we've got better kit and better things to do things with it. You really do notice it. And if you go back to like my first episodes and they were recorded and uploaded on the lowest quality audio I could get away with because I was in Africa, like you can totally hear the difference. And it just got me thinking about all these people that have probably got ideas that they want to share, or things they want to say, or a community they want to build, or a movement they want to communicate to. And got me thinking again about sharing what I know about podcasting. So that's basically what I'm going to do. So I'm going to be opening up some of what I do, basically, and how I do it online, and sharing that with you, and creating other opportunities to kind of work with me more closely if that's something you want to do as a big thing, to work with me, and I can share all of my secrets from the past 6 years, because the podcast has been going for 6 years now. Yes, can you believe it? So that's what I'm working on with that, and I'll give you some more details about that. But if you want to be like kept in the loop or whatever else, or you have some particular questions that you want me to cover in some of that, because I'm going to do a free series along with it, then just email me info@shinybees.com, or just DM me on Insta or something and let me know what your questions are and what you struggle with and what you think is the hardest part or the biggest thing stopping you getting going. And I know from what people have already said that a lot of it is the kit, really. The kit's the scary part, which it doesn't really need to be. So, and something else for you to look forward to. I'm getting some new kit myself. And I'm looking at doing some video to go along with the audio podcast. I love creating content for you guys. It's my favourite thing. And it occurred to me that if I'm going to whinge about how terrible YouTube videos are when it comes to teaching people skills or, you know, anything like that, then I'm better off just putting my money where my mouth is and producing something that is actually of an acceptable quality to me. So that's what I'm doing. So have a look out for that. It'll be some stuff over summer. I'm going to be away for the whole of summer in the Far East, and that's something just a bit different and an opportunity, I think, to share something a bit different knitting wise and community wise with all of you, just for interest really and for fun. And I think it would be good. So I thought, you know what, I'll make this my summer project and I will work on some video for my Shiny Bees crew. So that's what I'm going to be doing. So if you have any requests, again, let me know, speak to me, info@shinybees.com, or DM me or what have you, and let me know what kind of stuff you would like to see. So with all of those notices in mind, thank you for your patience on that. I'm going to tip into the main kind of thoughts, essay, or whatever you want to call it, section for this episode, which is Phone Down Knitting Up. So today the kind of chat is a little bit different to normal. And it's something, like I said earlier, that's just been going around in my head and been on my mind in terms of getting more time to knit and things that get in the way of that. Now, I've talked before about the idea of being a slow knitter, and a lot of us say, oh, I'm such a slow knitter. You're so fast. I'm such a slow knitter. And then we look at ways to speed up our knitting by changing the method that we use for knit. Like, a lot of people say that continental knitting is faster, and they change their style from a throwing style to a continental style to speed up the number of stitches they can do in a certain amount of time. And that's a reasonable approach to increasing the amount of knitting you can get done and how quickly you turn out your projects and things, you know. And I've been thinking about the idea of being a slow knitter, and I've said before, like, it's not that I'm a slow knitter, because when I sit down and actually knit, it's not slow. It's not something you go, oh, you're such a slow knitter. It's that I don't have enough time to knit, and therefore the resultant output is lower. And I blame that on being slow at knitting, when actually it's nothing to do with the speed of production of stitches. It's the amount of time I've spent doing the production of stitches. So like the outcome, a number of stitches you create is the number you can create in a minute times the amount of minutes that you've been doing it, right? So you can speed up how many stitches you create in a minute by a little bit, but ultimately the big factor here, like the thing that drives it, is the number of minutes that you spend doing it. Because say you did 60 stitches a minute and you sped that up to 70, well, even if you spent one more minute knitting at 60, you'd still have 50 stitches more than you would have had. So if you follow my maths there. So it's actually about the time you spend knitting. And all of us are super busy, right? Because we have different things that we need to do. We have different responsibilities. You might have children, you work, you have the emotional labour of running a house, dogs, animals, other hobbies, things you want to be doing. And it's very easy to put all of those things in first and go, oh, I've no time to knit, I've not enough time to knit. And quite often we use knitting as a reward. So that idea that you can allocate this really nice, juicy, rewarding block of time for a little sit and a little knit, with a nice cup of tea and a biscuit, maybe in the garden, where that's your little treat for the day. That's you grabbing a little bit back for you. And that little block, that protected block of time, is super appealing as a concept, like as a little reward for something you don't want to do, or after a hard day, or instead of like 18 glasses of wine, or accompanying 18 glasses of wine. It's entirely up to you. But quite often we want to create that little treat. And quite often what ends up happening is that instead of getting that block of juicy knitting time, we get busy doing something else. Someone else comes along with their monkeys and they want something doing. And that little protected bubble just gets chipped and chipped and chipped. And it leads to you not having enough time, because you don't necessarily want to, it's not as appealing as just grabbing your knitting and knocking out 3 or 4 stitches here and there. That little juicy amount of time for yourself it just sounds and feels way better and more compelling. So then you start thinking, well, I'm not making any progress. Like, I really want to wear this jumper that I'm knitting, and like, I want to get further on, and they started the same project before me. Or you're in a CAL maybe, and you're comparing yourself to other people who are getting more done. And maybe you feel a little bit bad about that because you're like, oh, I can't keep up. I'm so slow. Negative self-talk. This is meant to be a hobby and it's meant to be fun. And now I'm beating myself up because I don't have time, because I want this bubble of time and everyone else's priorities are encroached on my time, and I'm not getting enough time to do this. And there's the other aspect then of, you spend 3 months knitting a 400-metre shawl, and in that time you've added another 10 skeins to the stash, and you're just like, I'm collecting this way quicker than I could ever knit it. And then you do the sums of how long it would take you to knit it, and you wonder whether that beautiful skein of merino cashmere nylon is ever going to last 25 years. Like, I think we've all been there with this kind of idea. So I started to explore the idea of, where can I snatch back wasted bits of time? Because some of these things, like keeping your offspring alive and taking them to school and all that kind of good stuff, like, you can't get out of that. That is stuff that you're going to have to do. That's not really free time in your 24 hours of allocated time per day. You can't stay up all night because you've got to sleep sometime. And tired people make mistakes with their knitting. So out of your free time, where could I snatch some time back? And I started to realise that, and it's been something that other people have spoken about or mentioned in passing before, about the amount of time I waste. It's not spending it, it's wasting it on or with or doing something on my phone. And this is not in any way to make anybody feel guilty or say that you shouldn't be on your phone or anything like that, because for me, like, I do need to be on there for a certain amount of the day. Like, I have clients that I work with in the yarn industry and that I need to look after and answer questions and sort things out for. I've got friends that I wouldn't get to see otherwise. I mean, I work from home and I work by myself. So, I'm talking to my friends, I'm talking to contractors, I'm talking to service providers, organising all of that. And, I don't get out much, like, because of my domestic personal situation. I don't get out with my friends as much because I move house a lot. So quite often I'm leaving those friends behind as well. So it's not just the case that I'm a little woman who lives in a shoe or anything like that. It's just a lot of my friends aren't necessarily within coffeeable distance unless I'm on some kind of mega UK road trip where I can catch up with them, So I spend a lot of time doing that and talking to them. I spend time talking to my husband, who doesn't work in the UK, he works overseas. And obviously, like, he has to be a priority, right? You have to do that. And then that time doing research and looking things up or finding answers for the kids or talking about a subject and teaching them how to look up the information and all that kind of good, wholesome stuff that you do. But then there's also that massive amount of time that you waste and literally piss up the wall doing non-helpful scrolling. Mindless, non-helpful, blah. And just going into social media to have a quick look what's going on and then falling out of there dazed and confused 25 minutes later. Feeling a little bit sorry for yourself because your craft room doesn't look quite like that one on Ideal Home, and you've not knit as much as the other person in the CAL, and everyone's angry on Twitter and whatever else is going on. And that's not why you go into social media. You go in there to be social and to chat to people, and there are great communities online, and that's in no way dissing any of that. But quite often what can happen is you kind of fall out the other end of it, feeling a little bit pissed off, annoyed at what someone said. I don't even read the news anymore, to be quite frank, 'cause it's too depressing, and it can just sometimes feel like, that the world is ending because of the stuff that you're literally tipping doner kebabs into your brain at times when it comes to not being mindful about what you're spending your screen time doing. And that's not me being a little bit wanky and going, oh, you shouldn't be looking at highbrow stuff on the internet. I'm talking about those times where you get, you kind of fall out the other end of a little browsing session and you just think, oh God, that was a waste of time. Oh, like, you don't feel good about it. You don't feel like you've learned something. You just feel a little bit bleh, and annoyed or irritated or whatever else. So I thought, right, well, I don't actually think I spend that much time wasting time because I'm obviously super hyper efficient and I never go on social media and I never waste my time looking at trampoline and T-Rex videos. I am always looking up educational stuff and being a great, business strategist and organising my shopping so it's delivered at 7:30 on a Saturday morning by the same guy every week, because I know he'll come at 7:30 because I'm the only person in the whole of Chorley who orders shopping at 7:30 on a Saturday morning because I'm just like that. I've optimised all of my life to do these useful things. I don't waste any time on social media. I was wrong, baby. And I started using an app called Moment, which tracks your screen time, what you're doing, how many hours per day you spend on your phone, how many times you pick up your phone in a day, and even more scarily, what percentage of your life you are spending on your phone. Now, if you're a little bit sensitive disposition-wise, I do not recommend you get this app because literally I could not believe the amount of times I picked up a phone, the amount of time I spent on a phone, and the percentage of my life on the phone. And like I said, some of that is useful time and completely valid. And it's not like we're not going to go all Amish and lock them in a cupboard and stop watching TV. Well, I don't even watch TV. That's the annoying thing. I don't even watch TV and never use technology again. But there's a difference between productive, useful time that makes you feel good and wasted time that you're just like, I'm literally never going to get that back. So yeah, I started to become acutely aware that it was too much and not useful time either. And then I looked at it and thought, well, I'm not even going to tell you the figures because they are depressing AF. Like, it's a problem for me that I'm working on. I don't have many vices, but my phone definitely appears to be one of them at the moment because I'm on my own a lot and because of what I do and the way I do it. Some of that is necessary, but a lot of it is not. And I thought, well, how can we pull back some of that time? Because if I could even save half an hour a day, so it's more than half an hour now, don't you? Because I've told you that. Even half an hour, pull that back out of phone time into knitting time. That's an extra 3.5 hours a week, which is an extra 14 hours a month that I've carved back for whatever I choose. And that in my case would be knitting because it's taken me way too long to do my Lush cardigan at the moment. And I've got all this stuff I really want to get into making. But it's so easy when it's around you to pick it up and just have a quick scroll or quickly answer a WhatsApp or whatever else. And there's been studies done on this. There's been studies done about the way that having your phone within reach or within vision, even if it's turned off, how distracting that is to you taking things into your brain, assimilating information, working on whatever you're doing and focus, even if your phone is switched off but you can see it, even if your phone is in another room and switched on, your brain keeps going back to what is going on that because it's all to do with brain chemistry and dopamine and, immediate reward, instant pleasure, all that kind of stuff. And our inability these days to allow ourselves to be bored, because the minute you get a bit bored, you go, I wonder what's happening on Facebook or whatever. And they start looking, maybe I'll look at Instagram, I want to look at some of your arm pictures now. It's super easy to do and it's not that healthy to be doing it, I don't think, a lot of the time. Certainly not for the amount of time that I'm doing it. So I'm judging me for being unhealthy with the phone and unhealthy with the amount of knitting time. So I started thinking about reframing it into what could I do instead? How much could I knit instead? How would this be better for me mentally, emotionally, physically? If I could get in those calming stitches, that lovely repetitive nature where your brain just, all the stuff starts to fizzle out of it and that massive spaghetti and noodles just starts to unravel itself. And there's all those ideas that when you switch off that chunnering, the noise that goes on in your brain all day, because we're all so busy these days, we all have stuff to think about, the knitting quietens that. And then that's where the genius comes. Like if you could spend it it's almost like meditating, right? If you could spend that extra time doing that instead of filling your brain with the equivalent of a week old McDonald's for half an hour a day, then what could change? What could you do? And how much better would you feel? And how much more knitwear, crucially, how much more knitwear will you have by the next knitwear season? Because winter is coming, my friends, and it's only going to be 2 months. It might be 28 degrees today, but it's only going to be 2 months before it's knitwear season again in the UK. Could even be 2 days. Let's be honest. It's the UK. Just because it's 28 degrees now and it has been for the last 2.5 weeks doesn't mean it's going to be 28 degrees tomorrow. You don't know. You need the emergency knitwear. You need it there. So basically, that is kind of my thought process around it and where I've gone with this. And what I'm interested in is this just me? Is it just me, or are you seeing or feeling some of the same things that I've talked about in terms, whether it's in terms of your phone and your phone usage and how that is impacting on what you're doing? Or is it in terms of carving out more time for knitting? Or have you already been through this situation where you're like, Facebook, like Mark Zuckerberg does not need any more of my knitting time. Like, I need to put a stop to him and his evil empire by knitting harder. Is that you? Is that something that you've come across? And, do you have any resources, any tips, any ideas to share, any comments to make around it? Like I say, it's in no way judging anyone that wants to spend lots of time per day on their phone. It's just something that I've noticed I'm doing. I feel quite guilty about it and quite bad about it and like it needs to change. And I'm just bouncing that idea off you in case that's you as well. In the same way that, I bounce funny stories off you and everything else. So let me know. Get in touch, info@shinybees.com. DM me on social, whatever else. Go into the Shiny Bees podcast community on Facebook. Damn you, Facebook. And let me know then. Have a chat with me then. Tell me what you think. So there you go, something a little bit different this week. I'm playing around with some ideas for topics and formats and approaches and styles, and would be really great to hear from you what you think and what your preferences are and what you want more of. So do let me know, because it's a little bit of a different pace, different sort of topic and approach today to try it out. So that is all we have time for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show. It's been a pleasure having you back with me again, as always, and I will be back again soon with another episode of the Shiny Bees podcast. Have a wonderful week. Speak to you soon. Cheers. You've been listening to the Shiny Bees podcast. Full show notes for this episode can be found on the website at shinybees.com/115. And if you've enjoyed today's show, please feel free to come and join us over at the Shiny Bees podcast community on Facebook, where you can join in all the chatter there. Cheers.